I am Mary Sketch with the Virginia Soil Health Coalition, and I am for the soil to protect the landscapes, waterways, and resources that provide the food that we all eat and the lands that we recreate on for current and future generations.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of For the Soil, a Conversation. I'm Jeff Ishee. I say yet another episode because we have recorded quite a few episodes now. Let's see, this is episode number 22-4, and that just simply means that it's the fourth episode of 2022. But we have been talking with some very interesting people about some very interesting topics over the last several months, and today we welcome to the show Robert Shoemaker. He works with Virginia's Department of Conservation and Recreation. Without hesitation, let's go to the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of For the Soil, a Conversation. I'm your host, Jeff Ishee. Eric, I'm really excited to welcome to our show a very special guest today. He is in Warrenton, Virginia. He has a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge about conservation issues and soil health. He's a member of the Soil Health Coalition, and he's also a nutrient management specialist with Virginia's Department of Conservation and Recreation. Eric, I know that you'll probably have something to add as we welcome Robert Shoemaker to the podcast today.
Well, thank you, Jeff. As you mentioned, Robert's worked with the Department of Conservation and Recreation, specifically with their Division of Soil and Water Conservation for some time, and has also been doing a lot of on-farm research with collaborators across the state and across the region. So we're very fortunate to have Robert with us as he shares his own experience and journey to promoting soil health. So welcome, Robert.
Thanks for having me.
And Robert, just if you could give us a little bit of your background and your own journey to, one is working as a nutrient management specialist for people that might not be familiar with that. If you could tell us a little bit about your history and journey to a nutrient management specialist.
Yeah, so Eric, I started back in 1989, so it's been a few years back. And but nutrient management, as we view it, is we work with agricultural producers across the state to make sure that they use the proper amount of nutrients, fertilizers, nitrogen and phosphorus, and so forth, to produce a crop. But at the same time, we're interested in water quality, so we want to make sure they put down the right amount, but not excessive amounts. And our main charge within the Department of Conservation and Recreation is to protect water quality.
And Robert, for people that aren't familiar with the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, if you could share, I know it encompasses both parks and trails and waterways, and if you could just share a little bit more about the department.
Well, I'm actually in the Division of Soil and Water Conservation, which is a number of divisions within the Department itself. And one of the other divisions you might know is the Division of State Parks, and we also have a Division of Natural Heritage. That's just a couple of things that's within the department itself. And but our division overall, one of the things that the division does, the Division of Soil and Water Conservation, is we're legislatively charged with help improving water quality throughout the Commonwealth, and also to help improve the water quality of the Chesapeake Bay. And just briefly, we do that through trying to promote best practices throughout agriculture and work with a very important partners, the Soil and Water Conservation Districts. And this year alone, we have approximately $78 million to help farmers put best practices on the ground to improve water quality.
That's a lot of money. If you break that down per farm, there's a lot of funding out there available to assist farmers with improving water quality and kind of at the same time improving their soil quality.
Yes, and that's the very important point I wanted to make, Jeff, was that, even though we're focused on water quality, a lot of the things we do and the practices we promote by working through soil and water districts, there's a co-benefit of soil health in that. And so if you keep nitrogen and phosphorus out of the water and on the ground, your soil becomes more fertile. If you keep topsoil out of the water and on the land, there's an obvious soil health co-benefit in that process.
And Robert, you spoke to some of the principles that we're promoting, the idea of keeping the soil covered, minimizing soil disturbance, having a living root growing throughout the year, and energizing with diversity. If you could mention some of the practices that give listeners a flavor of what practices you're encouraging.
Well, and I want to go look at I can't remember the total number of practices, but it has to be well over 40 different practices. But one that comes to mind that's used quite widely is what we call a cover crop practice, where a farmer will remove either a soybean crop or a corn crop. And of course, instead of letting the soil lay bare over the winter, they can come in with an annual planting of maybe it's rye or a mixture of rye and hairy vetch. And that does keep the soil covered over winter. It maximizes living roots over the winter. And it also helps with the water quality objectives by reducing erosion and take up nutrients over the winter, which is a critical time. So there are a lot of things where soil health and water quality go hand in hand. Maybe just briefly, another one is on grazing operations, where we can help the farmer fence cattle out of the creeks and provide alternative watering systems, and then they can graze those lands in a more effective manner. That's keeping a better soil on the ground and increasing living roots within that system.
Robert, I have a question for you. I talk, of course, with a lot of farmers, and over the years, I want you to talk a little bit more about the importance of fencing livestock out of streams and creeks that are on farms. I've heard from farmers that some jump right into it and they're 100% all for it, and others are 100% opposed to it. They say it's too much trouble. The animals deserve to have fresh water that they can get in from the stream. They talk about the issues with maintaining a fence. If you ever had a flood in steep areas where there's flash floods, it just takes the fence right out. There seems to be a controversy of sorts around fencing out streams. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, there absolutely is, and that you can hear good points on both sides of the issue. So yeah, maintaining the fences, that's an issue. You just don't put them in and they stay there forever. They have a certain lifespan. So I think it's important to recognize those concerns that producers have. Right now, unfortunately or fortunately, those are a lot of voluntary operations where you can fence them out or not, but there's also talk of regulation coming in 2025. So I think it's important that we just look at the whole story on that, and I think that's going to be an important conversation going forward.
So I guess bottom line, my question is, does fencing out streams on a farm, does that improve soil health in that general vicinity of the stream?
We would think it would, and more importantly, you don't have the nutrients from manure and urine going right into the stream, which goes down into the local stream and then to the river in the Chesapeake Bay. But one of the things that is tied to that is we do provide alternative watering systems, so those livestock do have a viable water source. And then, of course, if you ever have an emergency or something, then they can certainly get access to those streams. But, so with that, and if you cross fence and you are allowed to give those pastures a rest from time to time, and you aren't continuously grazing those pastures, the land itself becomes actually more productive. And so the positive side of that is you might be giving up a little bit of a creek, but by the same token, the rest of the land is being more productive. Now, obviously, that depends from farm to farm, and some farms have a lot of creeks and a lot of areas of water, and some of them are more easily designed than others. But it is a big issue, Jeff, and you're right to point that out.
And I do think there's some research out there about the sedimentation that does occur and the benefit of even putting up a simple electric line. Or so I do think, as you said, Jeff and Robert, it has been somewhat of a contentious issue, and I think encouraging farmers to observe what's happening around the creek or riverbed is important, because it can contribute to the slumpage of pasture into a creek, and you really want to prevent that from a soil health perspective. And as you talk to farmers, they each have different experiences. I remember talking with one farmer that he realized that some of his practices was the erosion coming off the field upstream was clogging up his irrigation equipment. So that was one reason why he went ahead and fenced out the cattle on his dairy farm. So I think each person has their own perspective, and certainly wanting to protect water quality for everybody.
Yeah, and the other thing about that with a lot of these practices, we're constantly looking at new ways to improve how they're implemented. And certainly another thing with the cost of fencing, not that we want to get too far down that road, but the cost of everything, all the products that we use for fencing and watering systems, that's also going up. So we have to constantly look at newer and better ways to get the job done.
Robert, I'd like to sort of step back, and if you could talk about the importance of soil testing. And I know some people, when they think about soil health, they'll use the analogy of a checkbook where you would have sort of deposits as well as withdrawals. And I think from a nutrient management perspective, you can offer some insight on that.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. Nutrients in agriculture, we have to have them, because it's just like people, crops have to have enough nutrients to grow. So with soil testing, it kind of gives us an idea of how much gas we have in the gas tank, so to speak. And if you don't have enough, we certainly recommend more nutrients to get you where you need to go. At the same time, if we have excessive amounts of nutrients, not only are farmers spending excessive amounts of money on nutrients that they might not need, but it can also present a water quality problem. So soil testing is a good method to kind of give you an idea of where you are, how full is the gas tank. And so that's what nutrient management does. We not only test the soil, but in the case of a lot of livestock operations, we also test the manures. And that is a good source of nutrients on a lot of Virginia's farms, whether they're on farm or if you're purchasing them from another farm and spread them on your farm. So it's really an idea of where you want to go, how much you have in the gas tank, and how much more, if any, nutrients you need to apply to get you on your journey.
Robert, I know we've been talking a lot about agriculture, but I know there's also the importance of urban nutrient management. Anybody that has a lawn or a home garden or are managing fertilizers or other soil amendments. Can you speak to what's needed in an urban environment?
Well, we've had an urban nutrient management program for many years, and not only do we certify professionals in agricultural nutrient management, but we also certify professionals and individuals in urban nutrient management. So if you look at the lawns and golf courses and parks, that makes up a fairly significant amount of acreage in the state of Virginia. So our programs not only address agriculture, they address urban professionals and try to promote the same practices in urban areas that we do in agricultural areas. And that's, if you do decide to put down nutrients, make sure you put them down at the right time, at the right place, at the right amount, so that we can achieve the job you want to achieve, but also protect water quality at the same time.
And Robert, for people that are not, if would like more information about the Department of Conservation and Recreation, as well as the Division of Soil and Water Conservation, where would you recommend that they go for more information? Well,
you could, and I would double check this, but the website for our department should be www.dcr.virginia.gov. And that's Virginia written out, I believe. And another website I would give you is for the local soil and water conservation districts, which do a lot of work hand on hand locally with both farmers and urban people. I believe it's www.vaswcd.org. And that would link you directly to the 47 soil and water conservation districts in Virginia.
Very good information. And of course, we do like to highlight one of the 4 core principles of soil health in each episode. And today we hear from Dr. Rory McGuire about one of those 4 core principles, which is reducing soil disturbance.
Yes, minimize soil disturbance is one of the first things that we worked out when we were looking at conserving soils. After the Dust Bowl was caused by drought, but also caused by the moldboard plow disturbing and destroying soil structure. So when you disturb the soil, you destroy soil structure, and you also burn off organic matter. So minimizing soil disturbance by practices such as no-till, you help build soil structure. When you have good soil structure, water drains properly. You don't have problems with compaction. If you have compactions, your roots can't grow through the soil. Minimizing soil disturbance by not moldboard plowing, doing conservation till or no-till is extremely important.
Also, we like to challenge each of our listeners to take a pledge to improve the soil health in your own world, whether it be in a market garden, a cotton plantation, or maybe even an Asian pear orchard. You can take that pledge by visiting our website at forthesoil.org. That is the digit 4thesoil.org. Well, Eric and Robert, our time is up. It has really been a pleasure having both of you on this episode of For the Soil. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Jeff, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jeff.
For the Soil, a conversation is made possible with funding support from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Agua Fund. Other partners include the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia State University, Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and other partners of the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. Views expressed on this podcast are those of each individual guest. To download a copy of this or any other episode, visit the website forthesoil.org. And if you have a specific question about soil health, contact your local extension office, your local USDA service center, or a soil and water conservation district office. Music used during today's program was provided courtesy of The Flip Charts and Mr. Ruiz. All rights reserved. For the Soil, a conversation is produced by On the Farm Radio in collaboration with Virginia Tech. I'm your host, Jeff Ishee.